Thank you very much for the Executive Secretary for Integral Development of the Organization for the American States, also Seleni Matches, Executive Director of the Institute of Tourism Studies in the George Washington University, and also Mark Cruz, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Policy and Economic Development for Indian Affairs in the United States Department of Interiors. I will be always be thankful to Selene Matthews because he, a member of her team, was the distinguished person in charge of one of the areas of a project we developed. So every time I heard about the Washington University, I thank you very much for the support you provided us at that time. For me, it's a pleasure to take part in the first Indigenous Tourism Forum that allows us as countries to change, to trade experiences on a segment that is increasingly relevant, especially in these difficult times we are going through due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I give a warm welcome and a warm regard to our teachers and all our friends who are dealing with this pandemic. Today, Mexico is the fifth mega diverse country. Its geographical location contributes to the fact that Mexico hosts almost 12% of the world's biodiversity. Also, in addition, Mexico has more than 70 indigenous peoples and more than 7 million people speaking one of the 364 indigenous languages, which turns us into one of the most multicultural countries in the world. Throughout time, indigenous peoples have been considered as minorities, forgetting they are the very essence that honors a nation's identity. This is why we must understand their reality, appreciate their traditions, and rescue those elements that identify us as a symbol of unity and fraternity. The indigenous communities have increasingly taken a relevant role in the chain value of tourism, taking advantage of their biocultural patrimony. Sustainable community and indigenous tourism is becoming an alternative to the touristic activity for the preservation of the environment and also for generating social well-being in the recepting communities. In this sense, in accordance with the deep ancestral and cultural roots, Mexico has a historic opportunity to dignify their indigenous communities that for a long time have been um, outsiders in the national development and in terms of quality of life. All the scenarios related to the touristic activity in a post-pandemic scenario show that the tourists will be preferring traveling for leisure or for recreation to small places that are in contact with nature. And in this context, the indigenous peoples, the historic guardians of our Mother Earth, will play a key role in the reactivation of the tourism in our country and in the whole world, and especially in our beautiful continent. This is why the Mexican Secretary of Tourism is promoting the Mexico Reborn Sustainable Strategy, through which we leave behind a model of many travelers in few places, for few owners and foreigners, and a lot of money in few hands to give rise to a new touristic model of nature preservation with many local owners and money distributed and among many hands. For that purpose, we um, formalize the Tlotocan of tourism sustainability, going back to the organizational structure of the ancient Nahuas. where a council of the elders takes up commitments and makes decisions. In our case, with the participation of the Ministry of Tourism and other federal agencies, as well as with governments at the state and municipal level, international organizations, civil society, the private sector, the academia, and of course, the indigenous representatives. From this strategy, there are projects that born like the Trails of a Reborn Mexico, that showed the design and implementation of touristic paths in which communities can integrate the knowledge of the ancestors, the culture, the traditions, the biodiversity of the culture, the lodging, with um, the implementation of housing for touristic purposes, just to mention a few. All this will allow communities to make a profit based on the touristic activity without changing their traditional way of living and their identity. The Montezuma fish route, inspired in the legend of Painanis that took fresh fish to the Emperor Montezuma from the coast of Veracruz to Tecnotitlan, is one of the programs that is already operating in 6 states of this republic, 31 municipalities, 8 magic villages, 6 heritage of mankind sites, and 5 different types of ecosystems. So as to promote and so as to promote this route, at the beginning of the year, we launched this program in a relay race in which more than 1,700 competitors took part, between runners, hikers, and cyclists, and people from 20 different countries, from Canada, United States, Spain, Argentina, Germany, France.
Indígenas, totonacas, nahuas y otomís asentadas. Okay. Eh, de los estados asentados en Veracruz, Puebla, Tlaxcala, Hidalgo, Estado de México y Ciudad de México. La segunda edición
Mexico State. The second edition will be made in March of next year, and we are ready for that. And we hope that we can break the record of attendees to the event. In the same way, we are working in a very important project denominated CITUR, a word that comes from the Mayan language, and it means live tourism. With this initiative, we are looking to integrate the cosmovision of the indigenous communities, kept for centuries in diverse linguistic codes. Through CITUR, tourists will have the opportunity to experiment the integration of biodiversity in the tourism value chain process, from the ritual of planting a seed to the elaboration of a delicious gourmet dish, just to mention an example. Under this process and principles, we're already in the first stage, which we're focusing on the coastal ecosystem, rich coastal ecosystem of biodiversity, as in Huatulco, Oaxaca, the La Sierra de Laguna, in Baja California of the south, and the Biosphere Reserve of Xiancan, a World Heritage Site, natural site in Quintana Roo. We also developed the strategy of the chroniclers of the Mexico Reborn, whose principal objective is to elaborate the tourism guidebooks written by the very chroniclers of the touristic communities, by means of which we're going to spread the most authentic aspects of and genuine aspects of our towns and villages. For a long time, the promotion policy of destinations in Mexico was unrelated to the local narrative. Known publishers were hired that elaborated promotionals on tourism that were very far from the reality and the spirit of the villages, and they were eluding what really is essential. In this scenario, we just then resorted to the native chroniclers that are very much that know better than anyone what the local environment is and are model reference. And this gave us a result 72 book guides that will be presented in the second edition of the Tianguis of the magic towns, magic villages. The Tianguis are open air markets. Um, this will be celebrated on from 26th to the 29th of November of this year in the in the state of San Luis of Potosí, and then the next year we'll be elaborating podcasts, translations, and videos in which we'll show the richness and natural and cultural richness of our municipalities, towns, and indigenous communities. I cannot leave behind the strategy, the sustainable community-based tourism strategy in the Tehuantepechism in the context of one of the most priority programs in the administration of President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, which is the interoceanic corridor that goes from the Salina Cruz port in Oaxaca to the port of Coatzacoalcos in Veracruz, which is one of the most historically abandoned regions. And today we have some municipalities with a poverty index of 90%, but still these towns have enviable resources and enigmatic native peoples that mainly come from the Zapoteca, Mije, Chantal, Wabe, and Soque cultures. This strategy has like a goal the consolidation of the region as a community tourism, a relevant community tourism that helps in the welfare and endogenous development of the population. Finally, I would like to outline that we have established interesting and valuable strategies and strategic alliances with government authorities and international companies to provide an empowerment to entrepreneurship for the recovery of the impact caused by COVID-19. This has been implemented by Impact, a German entity that is a driver of innovative businesses and is financed by the Corporación para la Cooperación Internacional, Corporation for the International Cooperation, GIS, upon request of the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development of the Government of Germany. With this initiative, 60 social enterprises will be supported, cooperative indigenous communities and small, medium-sized businesses in the tourism sector in our country. Each one of them will receive 9,000 euros and technical assistance. This project will be taken forward by the German government with countries that have been severely stricken by the pandemic, by COVID-19, like Indonesia, Egypt, Kenya, Ghana, Jordan, and Mexico. And it aims to privilege the innovation, inclusion, and of course, the sustainability of relatively young enterprises. In the particular case of Mexico, this support has been destined to the tourism sector, one of the most severely hit by this sanitary crisis. With all these actions and strategies that were taken forward, Mexico, my dear friends, bets to a model of better practices, a model of best practices in the indigenous, community, rural, and sustainable tourism. My dear friends, in the current Mexican government with the fourth transformation head by President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, tourism is our best ally for sustainability. Never again will tourism be the enemy of our natural environment, much less will it threaten the local population. Let us bet for a tourism that takes care of and protects our environment and be the guardian of our historical and cultural identity. Thank you so much, or how it is said in Nahuatl, Tlaxacomati. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Secretary Turco Marquez, for sharing the highlights of Mexico's very progressive strategies and actions associated to cultural and indigenous tourism. We are so honored to have your full support through the Inter-American Commission for Tourism at the Organization of American States. Thank you again.